Welcome to Intellicide, the
Yes,
book
sir.
report edition.
Yep. Where we try to again to prove that intelligence is not dead and discourse can be, made, intelligently.
So we were just talking about favorite books.
Yes.
So you have a favorite series.
Well, yeah, I do. It's one of my favorites. I won't say it is my favorite, but
Okay.
we talked about the Waterman.
Yeah.
The
Okay.
Waterman series.
Waterman.
Yeah.
And Peter Brett.
Yep, Peter Brett. It's a very wonderful series collection. Yeah. The first series is 5 books.
Okay.
You're currently on the first book.
I just finished the first book, so I haven't started the second one yet.
Yes.
But I mean, it's a pretty good series so far. I mean, it's definitely a different concept.
Yes. It's
it's high fantasy sort of, but it's at the same time it feels post-apocalyptic.
Yes.
But it's I mean, I don't think this is spoilers. This is supposed to be a spoiler-free review sort of, but I mean, it's the story of a guy who lives in a world that's plagued by demons.
Yes. There's a world where and it's almost where, like you said, a post-apocalyptic where they had such great advancements in runes or wards.
Right. And that's the only way they can protect themselves from them. Wards. Yeah.
Right. So they would ward themselves to fight, or not themselves, but items to protect themselves from the demons that would rise up out of the ground after dark. And the demons would basically burn away from sunlight. So this young man.
Well, that's what I thought was interesting about it is, it starts out with, well, I mean, that kind of seems to be the point of that first book is, it's, they ward, the wardings are basically start out with your typical circle, your protections, your circle protection kind of thing.
Right.
Then, like you mentioned, they would ward objects and things, right. But then it's like the first book is called The Warded Man, because he literally kind of starts putting them on himself.
Yes. Yeah.
Which made it was an interesting twist. I thought it was, but they definitely set up like I said, high fantasy. They set up a lot of characters with a rich world. So,
absolutely. Listen, and right. I think what I said was that he was one of my favorite characters.
Okay.
In fantasy, and I read a lot of fantasy books and whatnot. I would say, if you've read the Game of Thrones and many people have seen the television series, but I would rank him up there with Jon Snow, Arlen Bells, or the Warded Man was that kind of character for me.
When did you first read it?
It's probably been at least I'd say six or so years ago at least.
Okay.
It was a very good series. I don't recall how I stumbled upon it, but once I read that first book, I was hooked. I read the other books, and it ended a while ago, and this conversation started because he has another series that has come out called the Desert Spear. And again, I don't want to spoil anything for Kyle because he hasn't read or
completed. And this is based in the same world. It's
based in the same world. They have some of the same characters. They also have, again, I'm not trying to spoil
protagonist and antagonist, basically.
Right. So, I kind of was disappointed in the fact that this second series started off from a first person perspective. And one of the things that I had mentioned was that first person is pretty hard to come off. And the only book that I've read that I thought did a very excellent job of it was The Name of the Wind. So I don't want to discourage anyone from reading it. If you like the first series, you should, read this because it's a continuation of the book, the same world, but
Yeah.
just be prepared for that. That's kind of a big transition to go from, third or second, person to first person or whatever.
Right.
It's kind of jarring. So
Okay. Yeah, speaking of first person, there is a series that I've been reading that I want to say it's on book 4 now. It's the first book. It's called the Bobaverse series. I don't know if you've heard of it. The first book's called We Are Legion.
Okay.
It's a really interesting series. It's basically the concept is a couple hundred years in the future, mankind builds a series of drones to go out and explore space, but they need an AI for it. And the AI they use is based on an actual person's mental pattern. And what it is there's a guy who's a computer programmer who is like supposed to be a brilliant guy, but he signed a contract for some kind of cryogenic service, when he was like the CEO of a software company. And hidden in the fine print is basically they get to, once he's dead and they freeze his body, they get to use him for whatever in the future. So his brainwaves become corporate property, and they use him as the basis of an AI.
Wow.
And so the interesting thing is it's told in the first person perspective of the guy who's wakes up in the drone basically as a drone.
Wow.
And what's interesting is just that all the concepts that the high science concepts that he's, because it's all space travel at faster, at sublight speeds. So a lot of what he does involves like time dilation.
Okay.
And from his perspective, it radically changes once you go into his perspective, because he leaves Earth and Earth kind of, advances through the ages in the background.
Right.
But he's out there in space. Basically, it's a Van Allen probe.
Okay.
Which is basically it's not a new concept, but a Van Allen probe is one that they make that has the ability to replicate itself. So it's like you put a 3D printer on a drone that's capable of making another drone. So it goes out and it makes more of itself. And then, can create auto factories and basically becomes this artificial intelligence race.
Right.
In space.
Okay. Oh, wow. Okay. I might have to, read that.
It's pretty interesting. Yeah.
Right.
But when you mentioned first person perspective, it made me think of that.
Yeah. And listen, I'm not saying that.
Well, it's not. I mean, it's one of those things. It can be done well, like in that series. But it's jarring though if you're reading a series that's told in normal. What is it? Third person.
Right. A lot of these series, they aren't really in the mind of the protagonist, that much. They are showing either someone else's perspective of the antagonist, or you are witnessing those but you don't a lot of time know what the antagonist is necessarily thinking or why they're doing that, and it's different
that way,
right? And it is a way a tool to give you more insight into the character or whatever. And so with this desert or the Desert Prince, I do, and we talked about that too, that I thought that identity politics played a little bit of the motivation in that decision. And I didn't necessarily agree with that, but again, I don't want to do any spoilers because you haven't read the first series.
We'll do a spoiler review after I've read it.
Yeah. We can do one after you've read it and go from there. Okay. But again, I think that the overall the series is excellent. I would say go read it because it was one of my favorite characters that was introduced. And I read a lot of fantasy. I do. I used to be exclusively a sci-fi reader, but I switched over, and this was way before I even joined the church. one of the things that I didn't like was it started getting a little bit more descriptive of the sexual encounters.
Yeah. I
It
mean, some of
started
the
doing,
series, like the Sword of Truth series.
uh-huh.
Have you ever read that one?
I think I read like maybe one or two books of that one.
The series started out pretty good, but honestly, by
Yeah.
like book 4, it started to sound like soft porn.
Yeah, listen, it's almost like sophomore where because most of these books are written by men. And you read it and you don't need to go into detail like that. If I want to get that, I'll go buy Penthouse Letters or right. I'll read something like that. You can describe that stuff without going into like, oh yeah, he does this and puts his hand here and this. Like I don't need to read 2 or 3 pages of that.
Yeah. So it's funny. There's high fantasy, like we were discussing before, Game of Thrones, The Wheel of Time, which is going to be coming out soon.
I can't wait I can't wait for that.
Yeah, that's what is it premiere in November?
I can't remember. Amazon's producing it though.
Yeah, it's going to come out on Amazon Prime.
Yeah. Yep. I can't wait for that. Now, hold on. I got a book, a series that I really like too. And this one kind of surprised me. I read this one. It's called the Emerald Cavern. It's about a young man. He discovers he enters a dueling tournament. So he gets in there and he does pretty good. He wins, just a golden ring, a simple golden band. And he comes to find out that the golden band, and it's almost like post-apocalyptic, where the world was destroyed by devices of the ancients, they call them. But the devices of the ancients almost seem like magical powers to them, because it's fantastic stuff where they can teleport, right. They can cause like weapon systems, I call them, to activate and destroy targets, etc. And so he finds out that this ring that he's won can utilize the ancients' powers. Okay. And so
it's like you mentioned, post-apocalyptic, where primitive people get access to super advanced technology, but it seems like magic to them.
Well, right, and so it's a lot of things that he can do with the and there's a foreign power. They also gain access to one of these rings, and they want his or etc. So it's a lot to it, but yeah, it's written by Mitchell Graham. I tried to find it in hard copy, and I tried to find it in ebooks, but it wasn't. I couldn't find an electronic copy on it of it. So
okay.
I don't think it was that popular, but it was something that I really enjoyed reading.
If you can post a link to it, and we'll include it in the show notes.
Okay,
for sure. Yep. That's one I'll look in the library for.
Yeah,
I like books like that because that gives me an excuse to go to like used bookstores or libraries.
Oh man, yeah. One of the things. I don't know what library you use, but Clinton Macomb Public Library.
That's the one I go to too.
Yeah. So they had this thing where you could basically fill out questionnaire, and then it would offer you suggestions on particular books.
Oh, okay.
And that's how I actually stumbled upon The Name of the Wind, which I read that. I was like, oh man, this is great. So yeah,
Isn't that Patrick Rothfuss?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes. Now that listen, he's starting to be like George R.R. Martin, because the last book was several years ago, and it's like, hey, Patrick, come on now, you've gotten people interested in this series. What's up with the next book? I hadn't heard anything about, him passing or anything. So hopefully he's still alive and well. And,
Okay.
please, sir, if you are, can you finish that series, please?
That's funny. So is there any other series that you have read recently that you would want to suggest to people?
Oh man.
Or
I haven't read.
I'd rather one or another series, maybe not that you've read recently, but that's one of your favorites. It's a classic.
That's a classic. Now this one I read when I was a kid. When I read this, what was it? The Puritan Chronicles. That's probably my introduction into fantasy.
Puritan Chronicles.
I think that I think that's the name of it. It is, and it is. I don't want to say it's juvenile, but this is back in the maybe late 80s, mid to late 80s.
Okay.
That I finished that series.
Okay.
I want to say it was mid 80s. Right. I was a teenager. Yeah. But again, like I said, it was my introduction into fantasy. I didn't start off with the Lord of the Rings. Right. And
yeah.
I really appreciated this series. It was one of those things where like it showed the death of a lot of the characters. It's written by Lloyd Alexander. And yeah, it was I thought a very good introduction. If you have a kid that likes to read and he might want to read some new content, that was the book series. So that one was pretty good. Another one that I actually like is The Furies of Calderon.
Yeah. That's the Jim Butcher one.
Oh man,
yeah,
that series took me by surprise.
Yeah,
that was another Clinton McComb recommendation that I really enjoyed.
That was one that actually I had listened to the audiobooks, and Audible had recommended it to me because I'm a big fan of Jim Butcher's other series, The Dresden Files, urban fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's actually, and Jim Butcher's a lot of things by Jim Butcher I would recommend. The whole Dresden File series, the what was the other one that he did, the Aeronauts Windlace. It's a series, it's a beginning of a new series that he did. I believe it's called the Aeronauts Windlace. But yeah, anything by him is really good. There's another urban fantasy writer who's along the same lines of that, Kevin Hearn, and the Iron Druid series.
Okay,
that's another really good one. Urban fantasy, kind of set in the modern day, but it's got a lot of fantasy and mythological elements to it. But it's set in modern day. So
what about you read the King's Dark Tidings?
No, I haven't read that one.
Oh, that one.
King's Dark Tidings. Hold on.
Yeah.
Who?
But Cale Cade.
Cale what?
Cale Cade. Kade. Kel and then Kade.
Really?
That's a very good series as well. That one hasn't finished yet. I'm waiting on, I think, book 5. That one I was blown away by. I like, that series. I like, listen, that's another character that I really enjoy. And the guy is almost flawless. Almost what was like the equivalent of a fantasy Superman, but it's his emotional vulnerability that or understanding of the world at large, just because of how he was raised, that I find fascinating. So that's a series too I think people should read.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's a good one.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah. That
so
one, yeah.
you had reminded me of something when you mentioned late 80s, and there was another series that I had read a long time ago, but I still recommend it to people because I still think it was really good. It's called the Chronicles of Thomas Covenant.
Yes, yes, I've read that. I think I read just one or two.
Okay.
I didn't read the end of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think it was a trilogy, and it was pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I thought it was really interesting because I read it when I was a teenager, like you mentioned, and it had the first realistic description of what leprosy
Yep.
is and what it's like. And I think because it was one of those things. It's an interesting novel. The protagonist is a person in the regular world, but he's got leprosy,
Mm-hmm.
and he's able to. And I don't remember exactly how, but he's able to, in kind of a Narnia-like fashion, go to this other world
Right.
where he is whole again. And not only is he whole again, but he's got like this magic white gold ring.
Yep.
Gives him powers. And I just, man, it's been like 20 years since I've even read it, but I remember all
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I thought that was a decent book. Yeah.
Yeah. I listen. Fantasy has been around. The Wheel of Time set the standard, or not the Wheel of Time, but the Lord of the Rings set the standard for fantasy.
Well,
And
like you mentioned, I hadn't even read the Wheel of Time, or I mean, the Lord of the Rings, until I was an adult.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
my introduction to fantasy, quite honestly, was Dragonlance, the
Oh,
Dragonlance
really?
trilogy.
Okay. Okay. Listen, I tried to read the Lord of the Rings. I really did, and we talked about that before.
Yeah.
It's a very dry read.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's one of
It's
those
very
things
descriptive.
I didn't appreciate it. It wouldn't have mattered to me until I was an adult, because there's so many layers to the Lord of the Rings, quite honestly. Even though he wrote the Hobbit, I think is a good introduction. The Hobbit you could read first,
Well,
because he wrote
yes, the
books.
Hobbit I enjoyed a lot more. The
Yeah.
Hobbit I really enjoyed.
Yeah. But the
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings was really like, so the Hobbit was written for his kids, right? It was written
Yes.
as a kid's story.
Yes.
In my opinion, the Lord of the Rings was more about him trying to come to terms with everything he had seen in the war, and just him processing a lot of it, honestly.
Right.
But one of the things I really appreciate is, in reading it as an adult, is some of the dialogue in
Mm-hmm.
Lord of the Rings is really clever. Some of the one-liners and some of it are really deep when you
Right.
get it. But I wouldn't have gotten it when I was a kid.
I hear you. I hear you. Yeah, there's a lot of books out there that um can captivate you, can take you away to a different world.
Mhm.
Um Another one I read a long time ago, the Belgariad,
I
by
don't know that one.
David Eddings.
I know David Eddings.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. That one I really enjoyed. And what was good about that one was, right, it was a 5-book series where the protagonist was a child, and then he wrote another series where he was an adult now, and he basically had to go and be the leader, or after pretty much, hey, you're the king now. You were a pauper before, or peasant, and now you're the king. And so it was nice to see these characters in that transformation or whatever.
Make sure you include the link to that one too.
Yeah, very very few times do you see characters after the story is told like that.
Okay.
Yeah, so I really
So
like that.
what do you think what did you think of the Wheel of Time? Do you think it's going
Actually,
to be big, as big as the Game of Thrones?
I'll say this. The Game of Thrones is, I mean, you could say it's high fantasy, but it's more like there's magic in the world, but it's more dark.
Oh, well,
Dark.
it's a weird thing. It's the difference between the book and the TV series. If you watch the TV series Game of Thrones, it's high fantasy. If you read the books, it's really more political intrigue.
Well, right, but there, you do know that there's magic, because like the wall and this and
right, but it's like kind of in the periphery in the book.
Well, no. I mean, you do, like, you get introduced to the others
Yeah.
in the very first chapter of the first book, or the introduction of the first book.
Right.
And how they decimate the Night's Watchmen or whatever. So there is magic, but right, it's more dark, what I would consider dark fantasy. Whereas the Wheel of Time, sure. Right, I would consider that high fantasy because magic is a prevalent force.
Well, I mean, and the thing about the Game of Thrones, when I first read it, and I want to say actually, man, it was so when I first read Game of Thrones, the thing that struck me, and I think we can spoil Game of Thrones now. I think it's probably safe to do that. But the thing that struck me about the first couple of books was that the pattern that he picked up on was taking his protagonist, his main character, is having like everyone in the world is unlikable except for like one character, and then he kills that one character.
Well, right. And I've had this discussion with people before, because one of the things that they, their argument was that the good guys, were naive.
Right. Yeah.
And that's what caused a lot of their deaths.
Yeah.
And I had a problem with that, because I'm like, listen, just because you're a good guy or a good person doesn't mean you're naive.
Well, it was almost like Machiavelli. He was like rewriting Machiavelli, because that was kind of the whole point of, he was kind of doing a summarized version of what happened to the Italian princes back during Machiavelli's time. It's like everybody was backstabbing everybody else, and everybody who tried to be a good person got stabbed in the back. And so he was writing about what he saw, and so Game of Thrones was basically a regurgitation of that in a way. You're right. I mean, we've talked about that before. It was. Wheel of Time is a different type of story, though. I think Wheel of Time is going to be dependent upon the strongly character-driven. In the book, it had a lot to do, I think, with just the book. I thought was interesting because it has the Wheel of Time starts with this like poem about the Wheel of Time and how time is like constant. It's a wheel and it's constantly repeating itself. So what happened once becomes legend. Legend becomes history, and becomes myth. Becomes real again. And listen, so that's kind of the theme of the whole thing. So
that first chapter of the Wheel of Time, or the introduction, I can't remember if it was the prologue or what, where the the king is walking through the castle and calling out for his wife.
Oh yeah.
And the descriptions of like that that captivated me from the first. And I love books that do that. When you can start reading a book and it's not a chore to read it. And it sucks you in like that. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And right. I give him a lot of credit now. And we talked about this.
Which he starts with the climax of a story, which is a great, it's a great, way to hook the reader. And like I said, but the way he was able to do it was by saying, well, this is from a previous age, it was a climax of a story. Yeah. And so and then he kind of like the next chapter is the beginning of the new age, the next story.
Right. Yep. Yeah. So I love the Wheel of Time.
The series that way.
Huh?
I hope they start the series that way.
Oh, dude. If they do, you will capture a lot of people right there. I mean, like seriously, I can just imagine. I mean, so the way it starts, this power.
Well,
so
I mean, I don't know that we want to spoil too much for people before the series comes out, but
come on, man. Listen, you got to understand this intro and this world. The power magic is split into two components. It's a male half and a female half, Sadar and Sidin.
Yeah.
And the male half has been basically corrupted by the evil one, the dark one. And so the more you use it, the crazier you become. So that's where right. So that's where the book series starts off, where the king, he's mad. He's totally gone, and he's killed everyone, but he doesn't know it.
Right.
And so he's walking through the castle, calling out his wife's name when right, she's dead. She's one of the people that he's murdered. So one of the bad guys he pops in and basically lifts the veil off his eyes for a second so he can see,
realize
what he's done.
Yeah.
Right. And so once he sees that, he calls the power down, and basically
cataclysm.
What do they call it? They like he cracked the earth or whatever. Like, you know, he calls down enough power where he cracks the earth and causes like cataclysmic type, you know, disasters.
Yeah.
And that's right. That was the end of the age. So if they can put a visualization to that, I think you do a lot more. Even like you can do that even better than what the Game of Thrones series did in that first episode and everything.
Yeah.
If you can put
so Game of Thrones hooked people with the end of the first episode, because they basically did the first book was the first episode, and so
the first book was the first season. Yeah.
First season. Sorry. So they hooked people kind of with that. This one, I mean, and I don't even remember how Game of Thrones honestly started, but this one
it started out with just like the book, where it was the Night Watch out and about or whatever in the dark, you know, in north of the wall, and they, you know, encounter the others,
right,
and they get wiped out, and then just like in the book, the guy that got away is executed by what was his name? The father, the one that got executed. Eddard Stark. He executes the guy because he abandoned the Night's Watch.
Right.
So I mean, it
is an interesting thing that the Wheel of Time has such a strong start. Like the opening scene is it's a memorably strong start to a story.
Yes. I think the series failure, where it stumbled, was because of the introduction of new characters throughout the series. This book series is 14 books. So if you start reading it, understand that there's going to be a lot of reading or listening if you do the audio option.
It's a long audio haul.
Oh yeah, I mean you probably.
I mean, in my opinion, it started meandering partially because the health of the author started to fail.
Mm-hmm.
He got sick, and honestly, I think after that, the quality of the story started to fail. He had the basic concept in his head, though, and the thing that struck me was that Robert Jordan passed away before the story was finished.
Mm-hmm.
And his wife hired another author to finish the story based on his notes.
Right.
She hired Brandon Sanderson, who was another really good author. But in my opinion, personally, and I don't know if you agree with this, but compared to the series up to that point, Brandon Sanderson actually did a better job. Like those last books that Brandon Sanderson did based on his notes, I thought were better than like the last 3 books that he had done himself, that Robert Jordan had come out with. Just the story was tighter, the pacing was tighter, the dialogue was better. It was just,
well, again, I don't know if what you said is true or not, that the book started meandering because of his health failing. I think that there was a lot of characters that weren't really central to the series overall.
Yeah.
That they started concentrating on. And that I think, I don't think the series would have been able to be wrapped up in maybe 5 books, maybe 7 or 8, if you would have kept the introduction of new characters to a minimum.
There was a lot of plot threads, honestly, that went nowhere, that didn't
Right.
have any effect on the main story.
Right.
So I think he could have wrapped it up a lot earlier.
Oh yeah, I think you probably could have taken out maybe 5 or so books, 6 books, you know, and been okay. They would have been thick books, but I think you could have done that.
Yeah.
But you know, I think that's just a difference of opinion. I you know, with the introduction of the first series or the first book, I really enjoyed it. Probably my least favorite book was I think it was the 3rd book. And that was the one where Rand's and
is in the desert, he gets locked in the trunk and all that stuff.
No, that's the one where he like his madness starts manifesting itself, and he starts hearing the you know, Luz Theron's voice. You know, more so that book was probably my least favorite out of the series, but the one where he got locked in the trunk, that's probably one of my favorite books. Book 4, book 4 and book 6 were probably 2 of my favorite books.
Okay.
Yeah,
I mean, the book 3 was the one where they actually went to the Ale Waste, right?
I think so. Yeah. Well, yeah. I think that was the book.
Yeah, I like that one personally. That was But all right, I think we're at our time for our. Might even be a little long on this one. This is a good episode.
Well, listen, it's a subject matter that we both know and love. And we haven't even covered, like, there's so many other book series or whatever, but we'll try to post links to them.
We'll do a second part of this for sure.
Okay. Yes, sir.
For sure. All right, man.
All right.
It's been great.
Yes, it has.
Intellicide signing
off.
Subscribe, saying like and subscribe, and then signing off.
Oh, yes, please like and subscribe. We need more viewers.
Exactly. All right. Have a good afternoon, man.
Hey, you have a better one. All right.